Did it start, Kumar? Yeah. That's all. Okay. Om Tavagatamratam Tapta Jivanam Kavivirititam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Shrimadatam Bhuvikananti Bhuridacha. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome, everyone, and Shubha Vijaya. Today is the Dashami, Vijaya Dashami day. Let's see. This is the day when the immersion takes place. The image of Durga, the worship is completed, and the very nice custom in our monastic order, other places, of course, but all of the junior monks make pranam to all of the senior monks, and all of the senior monks embraced all of the junior monks, and back and forth. Kola koli, they call it. Yeah. It's the one time when you'll see these very old sadhus and young sadhus and everything embracing like they're equals. But of course, we make pranam first, so it's a very nice thing to see if you're ever at Mellermut. This year, people couldn't come. I watched a little bit on YouTube, but because of the pandemic. Okay, we're on the chapter, the festival at Pānihāti, and it is Sunday, July 22nd, 1883, and this is page 267. Hey, devotee. Sir, you met Pandit Vidyasagar. What did you think of him? Now, we've met Vidyasagar before, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. He came from a village very close to Kamarpukur, Birbhum, I think, something like that. And he was older, of course, than Thakur, but Thakur met him. And Vidyasagar was very, very well known in Kolkata at that time, in Bengal, for his charitable works, for his scholarship. He started the Central College, I think, and was always helping people, was working for a big advocate for social reform, remarriage of widows, and outlawing the caste system and other things. He was a very, very well-known figure, and he was very highly regarded and highly respected. Thakur liked him. They had a long conversation. But then you will find out what Thakur says. So what did you think of him? Master, Vidyasagar has both scholarship and charity, but he lacks inner vision. Now, lacks inner vision for Thakur meant that he hasn't realized God. Not that he wasn't an introspective person. He was a very good person. But Thakur says, gold lies within him. Had he but found it out, his activities would have been reduced. Finally, they would have stopped altogether. Now, this was one of Thakur's teachings, that at a certain stage in life, that we start to reduce our activities. And this is a very standard thing in the Hindu tradition, that a time comes when one retires into the forest, becomes a vanaprasthan, and then eventually a sannyasin, gives up everything. And this Vidyasagar had reached that age. He must have been in his mid-60s or something when Thakur met him. 67, something like that, I think. Yeah. So from Thakur's point of view, it was time for him to maybe turn over the charitable works he was doing to someone younger, and for him to spend more time in spiritual practice. So this was his point. Had he but known that God resides in his heart, his mind would have been directed to God in thought and meditation. Some persons must perform selfless work a long time before they can practice dispassion and direct their minds to the spiritual ideal, and at last be absorbed in God. A very traditional belief. This is something emphasized by Shankaracharya in his Gita commentary, is that this performance of selfless work is for, he calls it sattva shuddhi, or for, we can say, purification of the heart, purification of the mind, and it has to be done until one reaches the stage where one can start reducing activities and spend more time. But without that, it's very hard to do spiritual practice without some purity of mind, purity of heart. So here, Thakur was saying it's different in everyone's case, that some from a very early age can realize that there's something higher goal in life and they can renounce it earlier. For other people, so it's not a very strict thing that first 25 years to this 25 years. I'd like to break it down that way, that some people have to spend more time in doing this selfless work. Not that he had a lot of impurities or anything like that, but this was somehow part of his nature. So some persons must perform selfless work a long time before they can practice dispassion and direct their minds to the spiritual ideal and at last be absorbed in God. The activities that Vidyasagar is engaged in are good. We sometimes get the impression that Thakur was not very pleased with all of the social reform work that was going on. The Brahmos, so what he was doing was a bit similar to what the Brahmos were doing. Thakur had nothing against it. A few little things, this abolition of caste and things like that. He said the real way to do it is through devotion to God. So a few little things he would have changed, but it was more the overemphasis on social programs and to the disregard of diving deep within and realizing the inner divinity. The activities that Vidyasagar is engaged in are good. Charity is very noble. There's a great deal of difference between daya, compassion, and maya, attachment. Daya is good, but not maya. Maya is love for one's relatives. Maya in Bengali has this secondary meaning, not just illusion, but a type of attachment. I'll tell you a nice story. When I stayed in India one year as a student, I was doing research. This was 1978, 79. And I stayed in two small rooms on the ground floor of a small house in Kolkata. And I got very, very friendly with the family that lived there. The husband and wife and a small daughter, 11-year-old daughter. And so one day I used to do things with them. We would go to the Kalighat together. He used to go every Saturday night. And then sometimes they would invite me up and make some special meal and things like that. So one day he said to me, "Do you know the meaning of Maya?" And I thought, why is he asking me this? I said, yeah, it has some delusive power and jnana, ignorance and everything. And he said, no, we're forming some Maya for you. They were starting to get attached to me. They were a little bit older than I was. So this is the meaning of Maya, that those whom we consider to be very close to us. Now, there's nothing wrong with it, except that it divides those who belong to us and those who don't. It's a little exclusive. That if we love our own people, that means we don't love the other people so much. And sometimes, this is what Swamiji says, that the way we show great devotion to our ideal is by hating every other ideal. So, not that Maya is a bad thing, but it has to be broadened and expanded. It's not one of those concepts that we have to just throw it out the window, because it is love, Maya, mamata. We have this term mamata. It's very interesting. And according to the Gyanis, the mamata, the feeling of mind, is a very bad thing. And ahamta, the I in mind, it's a very bad thing, that it's the source of ignorance based on false identification and everything. For the bhakta, the mamata, it means that I feel that God is my very own, and everyone else. It's a very nice thing. So it can be used for a name, mamata. We we all know a politician by that name, but the name itself is beautiful, whatever we think. So the same thing with this Maya. It has a negative connotation from a philosophical point of view, that it's a type of ignorance. It's the cause of our identification and bondage and everything. But from this other point of view, Maya is some type of deep love, which involves a little attachment and a little exclusivity, we can say. Daya is nothing but Maya extended and expanded, so it includes everyone. So there's no limitation to it. There's no self-identification. It's Maya is for those who we can identify with somehow. So it can be our own family, our own community, our own language group, our own religion, our own country. It can be expanded little by little, but as long as it's restrictive, it's Maya.
What is the pair of what we use, daya maya?
I don't know. Do they use that? Or Doya Maya, Doya Mai, like Doya Maya?
Daya maya.
Daya Maya.
Yeah.
Do they use
The
that?
names are there.
It's not Doya Maya, like Doya Mai
No, daya maya means
with
that
Maya, long R,
maya
double long
is
R.
attachment. Daya
Yeah.
means that
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yeah. I never heard that's a name they use, or no, just
It's like quality. কোনো মায়া দয়া নেই।
okay, okay. Yeah, probably just repeating Maya that way. Anyhow, sometimes this second reduplication doesn't really mean doesn't really mean that particular word. Like kawadawa, I think that's what it is. Dulci, kawadawa. So it just means Maya and etc. I don't think it means daya, because it's not Maya doya, Maya daya. It just means, right? So Mayan,
In colloquial language,
yeah,
it means like Maya is used as love.
as love.
Love,
Yeah, yeah.
there is no love, there is no compassion.
Okay,
Maya
Maya
daya.
daya. Okay. Hmm. So daya is good, but not Maya. So Maya is not good because it's restricted and limited. It's not absolutely bad. That's the distinction here. Maya's love for one's relatives. So there's nothing wrong with that. One's relatives, one's wife, children, brother, sister, nephew, father, and mother. We can add husband also. But daya is the same love for all created beings without any distinction. Now, Thakur has this little progression that compared to Maya, that daya is a very good thing. But when he's talking about compassion, then he'll say, "Ah, what a terrible low ideal this is, that we want prema, we want love." So if it's very much with our own limitations and everything, then it's Maya. If we expand it to everyone, then it's daya. But if that daya, that compassion for others, means that we place ourselves above others, or we think that I'm in good shape, I can help other people, and with the feeling of pity and compassion that way, then it's a very low thing comparatively. So this was that great incident that took place in Dakshineswar when Thakur was talking about Jiva Daya. Jiva Daya means compassion for all beings, and then he went into an ecstatic mood and he started railing against this. Who are you to show compassion on anyone? Huh? Who are you little worms crawling around to show compassion on anyone? Then he says, it's not daya, it's prema, it's love. And we should do it by seeing God in all beings. So this idea of daya, a little bit, is this, that we're looking at other creatures, other individual beings who are not so well off. We take pity on them. He says, no, we should feel a great privilege to worship them, God dwelling within, that this is higher than that. So we go from Maya to Daya, from Daya to Seva, to serve them, and then from Seva to Puja, as Swamiji says. And then it becomes worship. We worship God and others. Then we feel it's a privilege. Then it gets reversed. And we don't feel that we're doing something for the benefit of others. They're allowing us to do it. It's become a privilege for us. And so Swamiji says, let the one who is doing the service bow down, let the one who is receiving it stand up and receive. So it's a very nice way of seeing how we convert our feelings of love and everything in our actions, and observe if we feel compassion for someone. That is, there a little bit of pity there and a little bit of superiority, feeling that way. This is what Thakur didn't want, and Swamiji. M. Is daya also a bondage? Okay, now, if daya will spring from sattva, all of the gunas have the power of binding for us. Master, yes, it is. But that concept is something something far beyond the ordinary man. Daya springs from sattva. Sattva preserves, rajas creates, and tamas destroys. But Brahman is beyond the three gunas. It is beyond prakriti. What we're trying to do as spiritual aspirants is not go beyond sattva. We're trying to cultivate sattva. We can't give it up if we don't have it. We can't jump from the bottom rung of the ladder to the top rung. We have to develop all of these good spiritual qualities, and then that'll take us to the very top of the ladder. Then we can give it up. Because sattva also involves this feeling of I. I'm a good person, I'm a kind person, I'm helping other people. There's Vidyasagar. Thakur says what he did was out of sattva. But that little I is there, and this is another source of bondage. This is a chain of gold. The Swamiji says binds as strongly as a chain of iron. So, but Thakur says far beyond the ordinary, and that means that should be the last thing we worry about. That, I don't want to have sattva, it'll be bondage. No, we want to have all of these sattvic qualities: goodness, kindness, appreciation for others, lack of jealousy, hatred. All of these are all sattvic qualities. We need these in spiritual life. This sattva shuddhi. Purification of the heart means also not just getting rid of the tamas and rajas, but developing these sattvic qualities. So daya springs from sattva, this desire to help other people, to feel, to identify with others and feel their pain. Sattva preserves, rajas creates, and tamas destroys. This is why sometimes they'll talk about with the Puranas, they'll break them down into three types. Those that deal with the Brahma will be rajas. Those that deal with Vishnu will be sattva. Those that deal with Shiva will be tamas, because of the three acts of creation, preservation, and destruction. Brahman is beyond the three gunas. It is beyond prakriti. If we want to realize our own nature, our nature is the same as the nature of Brahman. Atman and Brahman, the same. So ultimately, we realize that these three gunas belong to the mind. They belong to the mind. We understand the gunas in two senses, as the constituent elements that make up this physical universe. But on a subtle plane, they're also the elements that make up our own individual nature, which is more important for us. Whether external objects, how we understand that combination of the gunas, that's not very important. But when it comes to our own tendencies, this tendency toward anger and jealousy and hatred and everything, that we recognize that these spring from tamas and rajas, and this feeling of love that it springs from sattva. Really, we can separate the three gunas into two gunas. We have sattva, which is what we're trying to develop, and tamas and rajas together, which are real obstacles. Thakur will tell that nice story here about the three gunas. None of the three gunas can reach truth. They are like robbers who cannot come to a public place for fear of being arrested. Sattva, rajas, and tamas are like so many robbers, but very different, of very different natures. Listen to a story. Once a man was going through a forest when three robbers fell upon him and robbed him of all his possessions. One of the robbers said, "What's the use of keeping this man alive?" So saying, he was about to kill him with his sword when the second robber interrupted him, saying, "Oh no, what is the use of killing him? Tie him hand and foot and leave him here." The robbers bound his hands and feet and went away. After a while, the third robber returned and said to the man, "Ah, I am sorry. Are you hurt? I will release you from your bonds." After setting the man free, the thief said, "Come with me. I will take you to the public highway." After a long time, they reached the road. Then the robber said, "Follow this road. Over there is your house." At this, the man said, "Sir, you have been very good to me. Come with me to my house." "Oh, no," the robber replied. "I can't go there. The police will know it." Thakur tells this story in different times. Sometimes he says, "I am also a robber." So the point is that tamas has the power to kill us. Now that means when we have that heavy type of tamas where we have no desire to do anything, we can't lift our heads off of the bed. We just want to turn out the lights and sleep and not do anything at all. It's a type of slow death. This rajas is when this ego comes out and we uh, get so engaged in action that we get bound up with everything. So attachment comes, and the ambition comes, and desire for more and more wealth and enjoyment and everything, and it becomes a terrible type of bondage. So tamas kills, sattva binds. Then rajas, when that comes, that overpowers the other two. Generally, they say that rajas will overcome tamas because tamas means we have no desire to do anything. How do we get over that? What, I can do anything. Now I know that I can get up, I can enjoy everything, do everything. It's not such a great thing, but it gets rid of the other one. Then we have to get rid of this rajas. So we do that with the help of sattva. So this sattva has the power to cancel out this tamas and rajas.
Unify the mind more.
Sattva itself means, yeah, see, it's very interesting because sattva also means just our own nature. So these sattvic qualities, somebody asked this question the other day. It was a very good question. Are we really developing new qualities, or are we allowing to the qualities of the self to shine through? Huh? It's a good way of looking at it. There's no right or wrong answer, but it's a good way of looking at it. That Satchidananda, that this Sat and this Chit and this Ananda, that these are sattvic qualities also. If we take Sat as meaning not simply this philosophical type of existence, but goodness. Sat, we take it as goodness. Chit, not simply just awareness, but knowledge. And Ananda, some type of happiness. So, in a sense, developing these sattvic qualities is all we have to do is eliminate the others. And naturally, that joy from within will come out. Huh? That'll be this ananda, and we'll have this, all of this false identification with this lower ego. When that disappears, then we get some type of wisdom, jnana. Huh? And then this goodness will come because we know the real nature of the self is already perfect and full, and we don't have to seek things and prevent others from anything. So that's a very nice way of looking at it. That these sattvic qualities are allowing the real nature of the self to shine through because we're cleaning the coverings. We have these lampshades that are keeping the light from shining, and we simply get rid of all the dust and dirt on the lampshade and let the light shine through. And these will manifest through the human personality as these sattvic qualities. It's a nice way of looking at it. I don't know if everyone will accept that idea, but I like it. Then Thakur explains, this world itself is the forest. The three robbers prowling here are sattva, rajas, and tamas. It is they that rob a man of the knowledge of truth. Tamas wants to destroy him. So that was the thief that said, let's kill him. No point in keeping him alive. Rajas binds him to the world. That was the thief, let's tie him to a tree. But sattva rescues him from the clutches of rajas and tamas. So we have to take the aid of sattva. These sattvic qualities will save us. They'll cancel out all these tendencies towards anger and jealousy and hatred and smallness and exclusiveness, all of these other these passions and all the bad qualities. Under the protection of sattva, man is rescued from anger, passion, and the other evil effects of tamas. Further, sattva loosens the bonds of the world. It was the thief who came back and untied him. But sattva is also a robber. It cannot give him the ultimate knowledge of truth, though it shows him the road leading to the supreme abode of God. Setting him on the path, sattva tells him, look yonder, there's your home. Even sattva is far away from the knowledge of Brahman. Far away because we have to completely transcend this lower self, even with the sattvic qualities. But on the other hand, not so far away. This is when we develop sattva, we've really come very close to the end of the journey. So then he talks about, so even sattva is far away from the knowledge of Brahman. What Brahman is cannot be described. Okay, this is a very standard statement that Thakur says. Even he who knows it cannot talk about it. There's a saying that a boat, once reaching the black waters of the ocean, cannot come back. Thakur makes one or two references to something that we don't talk about very much, and that is, I believe from what he said, that the common idea about samadhi during his time was that no one returns from it. Because sometimes he'll make little references that some people say that no one can return from. That means that nirvikalpa samadhi. That the idea was that this was the what led to passing away. That one would pass away in that state of samadhi. And so Thakur had to try to explain to people, no, it is possible to come back from that state. And he, of course, he was in that state for a long time. But you stay there too long, you can't come back, and only certain people can come back after some can go back and forth. He has all of his distinctions that way. But because otherwise it wouldn't make sense that what Brahman is cannot be described. He's talking about those who've had that experience. Those who haven't had that experience, they go on and on describing it. We have that nice passage from the Upanishads that the father sent his two sons to study with the guru, and he comes back and he asks one, tell me, what did you learn? What is the nature of Brahman? And he recites all verses. Mostly in the Upanishads, it'll be negative things, that which can't be seen or heard, or things like that. But then the other son, he asked him, he said he just kept silent. He lowered his head and kept silent. The father said, I see you have understood a little bit of what Brahman is. What Brahman is cannot be explained, cannot be uttered by, because to think about it is to become one with it, to enter into it. This was Thakur's own experience. Whenever he would try to explain the nature of it, he would go into samadhi and become one with it. Then who is there to explain? And then we'll talk about the salt dal and everything. So it says there's a saying that a boat once reaching the black waters of the ocean cannot come back. This is another way of saying that one does not come back from that nirvikalpa samadhi state, which we don't really find in the Raja Yoga or anything, but it seems to have been what people understood at that time. Once 4 friends, in the course of a walk, saw a place enclosed by a wall. The wall was very high. These are the walls that is not a wall to a roof or anything, just like an open area with a outside wall that would have a little bit of a ledge on top. You could climb up and sit on the top of the wall, something like that. The wall was very high. They all became eager to know what was inside. One of them climbed to the top of the wall. What he saw on looking inside made him speechless with wonder. He only cried, "Ah, ah," and dropped in. He could not give any information about what he saw. The others too climbed the wall, uttered the same cry, "Ah, ah," and jumped in. Now, who could tell what was inside? Now, there's another illustration Thakur gives many, many times, but other times he'll say that the fourth friend climbed to the top, looked over, saw this tremendous joy, singing and dancing and feasting and everything, and also felt the pull to jump over, but then said, "No, let me go back and tell other people about the tremendous joy on the other side of the wall." So we don't get that full story here. He refers to the beginning part of it. Sages like Jada Bharat and Dattatreya. Jada Bharat, you all know who he was. Yeah, that King Bharata, when he went into the forest and had his pet deer and became attached to that pet deer, and then was born as a deer. Now, being born as a deer, because this is just to show that idea that the last thing we think of will determine the future birth, and that as he was dying, all he could think of was that pet deer. He was so attached to it. But it doesn't mean he had to go from every other birth to get back. It was just a little blip. So the very next birth, he was born as a sage, but who could remember his past lives. And he remembered how attached he got to that deer, and he took a vow that he would never get attached again, so he wouldn't speak. So Jadabharata, they thought he was dumb. They were just an ordinary person. There's a nice text, I don't know what it is, I read it years ago, that there were some procession was going along, and there were bears carrying a palanquin, and one of them injured himself or something. They needed somebody to take over, and they saw this simpleton, this sort of man sitting by the side of the road, and they said, "Hey, you, come on!" And they made him a bearer, and then they asked some questions, and he gave all of the high Advaita replies to everything. So there's some text about that. So he was considered a fully realized soul. Dattatreya, the whole Shankaracharya tradition goes back to Dattatreya as the original guru for that sampradaya. So these are considered to be the men of the highest wisdom. Sages like Jada Bharat and Dattatreya, after realizing Brahman, could not describe it. A man's eye completely disappears when he goes into samadhi after attaining the knowledge of Brahman. So this is the defining feature of nirvikalpa samadhi. There's no sense of I. There's no sense of I'm having this experience. Oh, how wonderful! Nothing like that. That it's just the mind is gone. There's just merging. Just Brahman alone exists at that time. There's no knower. It's not a blank or empty experience, but it's not anything involving this triad of knower, object of knowledge, and knowledge. A man's I completely disappears when he goes into samadhi after attaining the knowledge of Brahman. That is why Ram Prasad sang, addressing his mind, "If you should find the task too hard, call upon Ram Prasad for help." The mind must completely merge itself in knowledge. Knowledge doesn't mean book knowledge or anything like that. It means in that chit aspect, in that pure consciousness. The mind completely merges into pure consciousness. So it ceases to exist. they talk about manonasha. It doesn't mean that it's completely destroyed. It means it's completely non-functional at that time. Otherwise, Thakur couldn't come back and experience the world and everything. The mind is just non-functional at that time. No vrittis, no mind. We have these no-mind schools of Buddhism, that there's only thought. What is the mind? The mind is something that we speculate must be there in order for thoughts to exist. So if the thoughts aren't there, where's the mind? There's nothing. There's just that ocean of consciousness in Vedanta, of course. So the mind must completely merge itself in knowledge, but that is not enough. Ram Prasad, that is the principle of I, must vanish too. Then alone does one get the knowledge of Brahman. A devotee, sir, is it possible then that Shukadeva did not have the ultimate knowledge? Now, Thakur talks about Shukadeva a lot, and Prahlada and all of these ancient figures. Shukadeva was perfectly pure and free from his very birth. And Thakur praises him all the time, but this same question comes up. Who can really come back from the highest experience after merging in the ocean? Who can come back? Who simply melts into the ocean? No way of coming back. So Thakur is ambivalent here. According to some people, Shukadeva only saw and touched the ocean of Brahman. He did not dive into it. That is why he could return to the world and impart religious instructions. So this is that school of thought. If he dove into it, he would have melted. That we're all salt dolls. He would have melted and couldn't have come back. He would have become one with the ocean. According to others, another school of thought, he returned to the world of name and form after attaining the knowledge of Brahman for the purpose of teaching others. Thakur is not taking a stand here. He's simply giving us two different options.
Thakur never mentioned avatar here, right?
No, but very often he'll talk about the Nitya Siddhas, these ever perfect people, like Shukadeva. So he considered him to be a perfect soul. Yeah, we don't know exactly. This whole avatar doctrine doesn't apply in all cases. When he's talking about the avatar, he'll be talking at most about Chaitanya Deva, Rama, Krishna, and everything. But these were definitely Jivan Muktas at the very least, perfect free souls. So according to others, he returned to the world of name and fame after attaining the knowledge of Brahman for the purpose of teaching others. So this is one thing that Thakur says, that those who have a mission in life, whether we say avatar or Ishvara Koti or Bodhisattva, those who feel some call, like the fourth friend, to tell others that they'll postpone their own enjoyment of liberation and come back. They can come back, but not if they stay too long. You stay up too long, and the pull from the other side will be too strong. Because the longer you stay, the more the scent of I disappears. Once that's gone, and then no one to come, unless Divine Mother herself pulls you back. Remain in Bhavamuka. Otherwise, there's no mechanism by which one can return to the world. So that's what Thakur means, that's all dull. It's already one with the ocean. There's no way for it to come back. So what was this that Shukadeva had to do? He had to recite the Bhagavata to King Parikshit and had to teach people in various ways. Therefore, God did not destroy his ego altogether. There's a conversation between M and Sri Ramakrishna once, when M speculates. He's explaining that Thakur that yes, you've had this highest nirvikalpa samadhi, but you kept a little trace of ego to be able to come back down and enjoy the world and teach others. And Thakur says, no, I didn't do it. Divine Mother did it. Because at that point, one can't decide. There's nobody there, nobody home at that point. So it's here saying, therefore God did not destroy his I altogether. God kept in him the ego of knowledge. So this is that state of vijnana where one has this uh, touch of Maya, but it's all Vidya Maya. A little touch of Maya means some identification with the body and some identification of our own individuality, but that'll always be through this divine relationship, either the ego of knowledge or the ego of devotion. The ego of devotion can be many types: the child of God, or servant of God, any of the relationships. Devotee, can one keep up an organization after attaining the knowledge of Brahman? He just said very few people can even come back to the world. Now we're talking about an organization. Master, once I talked to Keshab Sen about the knowledge of Brahman. He asked me to explain it further. I said, if I proceed further, then you won't be able to preserve your organization and following. Then please stop here, replied Keshab. All that. But still, I said to Keshab, I and mine indicate ignorance. Without ignorance, one cannot have such a feeling as I am the doer. These are my wife, children, possessions, name, and fame. Therefore, Keshab said, Sir, if one gives up the I, nothing whatsoever would remain. This is true. This is exactly why Thakur says it's like when you burn camphor. If you burn incense, there'll be ash that's left. You burn camphor, nothing is left. Nothing. I know it all goes into the air. Huh? Something, you won't find the slightest trace ash, no residue, nothing at all. So this is, Thakur will agree. Yes, when his ego is completely effaced, there's not even a trace of it left. So Keshava said, Sir, if one gives up the I, nothing whatsoever would remain. I reassured him and said, I'm not asking you to give up all of the I. You should give up only the unripe I. So this, we can take this back and say, eliminate all the tamas and rajas. That ripe I will be the one that's become sattvic, become purified. And Thakur uses this term ripe I to indicate the relationship. That I which identifies itself as a child of the Divine Mother, servant of God, any of the relationships. The unripe I makes one feel I am the doer. Oh, I read that. Okay, renounce the unripe I and keep the ripe I, which will make you feel that you are the servant of God. It's all the same I. It's all the same I. We're because I simply means what I identify with. How do I look upon myself? So he's really saying renounce this false identification. If there's any false identification or any superimposition, any aropa, any of that, let it be with this relationship with God. And that'll destroy everything else. So renounce this unripe I and keep the ripe I, which will make you feel that you are the servant of God, his devotee, and that God is the doer and you are his instrument. This is an attitude that comes when this I disappears. As long as we have a sense of I, then we can feel that we're a servant of God that way. But when the I completely disappears, then we feel that we're just a puppet in the hands of God. God is doing everything through us. But Thakur says, beware. As long as that sense of I is there, then don't claim that everything is God working through you when you're doing all sorts of selfish things. Devotee, can the ripe I form an organization? This is somebody obviously with some desire to have a following. We don't know who it is. Master, I said to Keshab Sen that the I that says I am a leader, I form this party, I am teaching people, is the unripe I. It is very difficult to preach religion. It is not possible to do so without receiving the commandment of God. The permission of God is necessary. This chaprash idea, Thakur talks about it very often. Everyone is always confused about that. One of the pundits came and Thakur was talking about that, and who was a Hazrat? Somebody said, "Oh, I'm sure he's received this chaprash," and he said, "No, I haven't. I don't know what this is." Anything like that. What does it mean exactly In Thakur's case, it was very clear. Mother spoke to him. It was very clear in his case, and directed him and led him by the hand and everything. Otherwise, uh, it'll have to be uh, something that brings us back to the world after the attainment of that ultimate experience, that enlightenment experience, however we understand it. That be short of that, then is it the blind leading the blind? We if we think that we can teach other people and that we'll know what's best for everybody else, there's tremendous problems come from that. Shukadeva had a command from God. See, so he did consider the Shukadeva to be a perfect soul to recite the Bhagavata. If after realizing God, a man gets his command and becomes a preacher or teacher, then that preaching or teaching does no harm. In fact, this is what the world needs. His eye is not unripe, it is ripe. I asked Keshab to give up this unripe eye, the ego that feels. The ego that feels, I am the servant of God and lover of God, does not injure one. Thakur normally says, in fact, it helps one. In fact, we have to have that. He's constantly telling us that we have to have this type of eye that allows a relationship with God. Like the Bhab, Ashray Kotaha, he said, we have to, our whole spiritual practice will be grounded in that relationship. If we're really Gyanis, that relationship is I am Brahman. That's also a relationship until we have that ultimate realization. But from the devotional schools, it'll be one of the standard Vatsalya, Dasya, different bhavas that we have. I said to him, he's telling about his conversation with Keshab, you've been constantly talking of your organization and your followers, but people also go away from your organization and also criticize him and start other groups and everything. This happens everywhere. Keshab answered, it is true, sir. After staying in it several years, people go to another organization. What is worse, on deserting me, they abuse me right and left. Of course, this is the way of the world. Why don't you study their nature, I said. Is there any good in making anybody and everybody a disciple? Now, this, of course, was Thakur's understanding with regard to Keshab. With regard to himself, he was after the cream of the crop, the ones that would be the future world teachers. Holy Mother, she was after everybody. So there are only a few cases where she demurred a little bit or said, no, wait, my child, the time is not right. A few, or I have a high fever now, this and that. Otherwise, she really didn't turn anybody away. She had a different attitude, that's all. I said to Keshab further, you should accept the Divine Mother, the primal energy. Yeah, they say that Thakur gave the gift of the name of Mother to the Brahmo Samaj. And then we find in later songs that were written, it's Taral Kisanyal, Amai Dema Pagwakar, oh Mother, make me mad with thy love. Before that, it was all just this Ishwara type of thing. It was more impersonal. So I said to Keshab further, you should accept the Divine Mother, the primal energy. Brahman is not different from its Shakti. What is Brahman is also Shakti. Now, when Thakur says what is Brahman is also Shakti, he's not identifying Brahman with power, with Shakti as power. He's identifying Brahman with that divine being endowed with power. So really what he's saying is that Brahman and Ishvara, or Brahman and Mother, are not two separate things. Sometimes he'll use this Shakti as the divine power. Sometimes the Shakti means Brahman together with its Shakti, with its power. So when he says there's no difference whatsoever, if we're talking about a person and the power that the person has, there's a difference. But they're avinna, they're inseparable, abheda. We can't have that power to burn without fire, or fire without the power to burn. They can't be separated out. But other times he'll say Kali and Brahman and Kali are one and the same. That's the different type of Shakti. And then He's talking about Brahman together with its Shakti, he calls mother, or Kali. It's a very small distinction, but sometimes it's confusing. I also used to wonder, and sometimes I think this non-different doesn't mean identical. It means inseparable, abheda. uh, That you can't have one without the other. This is why all the images of Kali and Durga and everything, Shiva will have to be there. They have to. The Shakti can't exist without the ground, and the ground can't exist without its Shakti. As long as a man remains conscious of the body, he is conscious of duality. It is only when a man tries to describe what he sees that he finds. It is only when a man tries to describe what he sees that he finds duality. Keshab later on recognized Kali. So Kali doesn't mean that he started believing in the Divine Mother with the different arms and skulls and all of these things. It means this whole concept, and the joy of calling on God as Mother. This is the other half of it. The first is really a metaphysical doctrine that the mother gives birth to the universe, like a mother gives birth to her child. But the other is how the child loves the mother and how the mother loves the child. And this is our freedom. This is our freedom to form our own conception of God that works for us. And this idea of the Divine Mother, those who feel that the love of the mother is the most precious thing in the world, and that this is the most selfless type of love. If they want to conceive of God as having perfectly selfless love, then they can think of God as mother. It's a very sensible idea. It doesn't mean that they'll say, no, you can't worship God as Father or anything else. This is my understanding. This is the way I like to do it. One day when Keshab was here with his disciples, I said to him that I would like to hear him preach. He delivered a lecture in the Chandni. Then we all sat by the bathing ghat and had a long conversation. I said to him, it is Bhagavan alone who in one form appears as a Bhakta and another as the Bhagavata. Please repeat, Bhagavata, Bhakta, Bhagavan. So the Lord, the devotee, and the scripture and the holy teachings that describe the Leela of the Lord. Keshab and his disciples repeated the words. Then I asked him to repeat, Guru Krishna Vaishnava. Okay, now this will be a little bit too sectarian, huh? Thereupon Keshab said, Sir, I should not go so far now. People will say that I've become an Orthodox Hindu. They would never be confused with Orthodox Hindus because they wouldn't set foot in a temple or bow down before an image or anything. A lot of things they didn't accept. They didn't care for this guru idea, this avatar idea, this personal God. Their personal God was a very impersonal personal God. Not much personality, but still that will have the attributes of goodness and kindness and justice and mercy, things like that. It is extremely difficult to go beyond the three gunas. Again, he's talking about when he says we have to go beyond all the three. Generally, Thakur is very practical. Just as when he says we have to get rid of the ego completely, next sentence will be impossible to get rid of the ego completely. So utilize it. It'll be the same thing here. Extremely difficult to go beyond the three gunas. One cannot reach that state without having realized God. So we try to transcend the three gunas in order to realize God, but only after realizing God are we really free from that, because there's no attachment to anything. In Gita, we have a whole chapter on what is the description of the person going beyond the three gunas, almost identical with Sthita Prajna, that just unaffected by anything, observing things and not attached to the functioning of the mind of the gunas or anything like that. So it's extremely difficult to go beyond the three gunas because we have to go beyond our own mind, his own sense of I and everything. One cannot reach that state without having realized God. Man dwells in the realm of Maya, relativity, time, space, causation, all of that. It doesn't mean that we're sunk in the deepest type of ignorance. We may have a little clarity regarding things, but still, we live in this relative universe. Maya does not permit him to see God. It has made him a victim of ignorance. This is the deep type of Maya. What is this ignorance? It's not the ignorance regarding our own nature, and it's not such an evil thing. It's not that type of ignorance that'll make us want to go and murder people and rob them. And it's that type of ignorance that makes me feel, this is me. This is who I am. That false identification. Once, Hridai brought a bull cow here. I saw one day that he had tied it with a rope in the garden so that it might graze there. I asked him, Hridai, why do you tie the calf there every day? Uncle, he said, I'm going to send this calf to our village. When it grows strong, I shall yoke it to the plow. Now, immediately Thakur is thinking, oh my God, poor little calf is here and everything, and he doesn't know this tremendous bondage and pain and suffering waiting for him. As soon as I heard these words, I was stunned to think how inscrutable is the play of the divine Maya. Kamarpakor and Shihor was the Sridhar's village, are so far away from Calcutta. This poor calf must go all that way. Then it will grow, and at length it will be yoked to the plow. This is indeed the world. This is indeed Maya. I fell down unconscious. Only after a long time did I regain consciousness. Okay, the day continues, but we're going to get a break here. Then we'll go back 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'll stop here. And so this Durga Puja time is over. It's a very nice period. This idea of worshiping God as Mother, a very sweet idea. And in Bengal, this tradition is so nice. Very common to call one's own daughter Ma, right? So this is a time we worship the Divine Mother as our own daughter who was married off to this madman in the Himalayas and can't come home very often. She lives far away. So for a few days, she gets to come back to stay with her parents in their home, and how much joy there is. And then this feeling of sadness, everything is over, and she has to go back to the Himalayas. But we always say, may she remain in our hearts. So it's this Vijaya Dashami. This is the time when we should feel that Mother was available to us in some visible form. And now she goes back and dwells within us as that divine presence within the heart, as the feeling of motherhood, that motherly love that dwells within the heart. So let us stop here. I'll close. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukam Bhatudha Vigraham Hari Ishavataram Parameshamediam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namah. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us.